Okay. Welcome, everybody. Parents, caregivers, family members. This is the Do the Right Thing Legal Advocacy webinar. Just being here tonight is a giant step towards advocacy. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to just say advocacy comes in many forms. Fighting with state agencies for services, fighting with school representatives for a robust IEP, fighting with medical professionals for your diagnosis and then for treatments, fighting with local politicians for access to parks, programs, and anything else we need for our children. So each of us has already been advocating since day one. Think about that poor parent whose seizing newborn was told they had reflux. So from right from the beginning, everybody has been advocating for their STXer. So thank you for being here, and we're going to see how we can empower ourselves to do more. Today, we're going to focus on how we can channel this advocacy towards our local governments and all the way to Washington, D.C. I want to introduce our two speakers. We have Lindsey Hallett, mom of Haley and Hannah, twin STXers, and their big brother, Lewis. We also have Shannon von Felden. She is the Vice President of Advocacy for the EveryLife Foundation for Rare Diseases. So welcome. Thank you to my speakers. I would like to first introduce Lindsey. She's going to tell us her story and her advocacy journey.
Hi, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I am Lindsey, and I am the daughters of Hannah and Harper Hallett, and as well as my son, Lewis Hallett. I'm here to kind of speak about my why and how I found it. I feel like I've been advocating my whole life. I worked with kids when I was a kid. I studied human development and family studies in college. I turned that into a career of teaching. And then the twins came, and so did their diagnosis 1 month after COVID hit. So that was a navigation of fear of them getting the condition or getting the disease, as well as worrying about the medical process that this will entail. Well, we need help with trying to navigate the diagnosis. So when people were dealing with COVID, we were also dealing with the diagnosis of our daughters, which you would imagine is difficult, but I would like to consider myself an overachiever. It made it a job. I made it a job to make sure that I was advocating for them from the very beginning. And my son was 3 at the time, and he is now 10, and he is the absolute best big brother that you could possibly ask for in a scenario like this. He's always the one pushing at our Move to Cure walks. He's always the one to ask first, I'll push her, which is so beautiful. And we always make sure that we also give him the same amount of attention as the girls. We do special activities together, theme parks, go on trips, just to make sure that he understands that the twins get a lot of attention, but he's equally as loved, which I think is something that we often try to navigate as parents with disabled children and able-bodied children. So when the diagnosis happened, I kind of went full speed. PT, OT, swim, speech, tracking every single moment of development. I had a notebook. If they sat nice for 3 seconds, I wrote it down. And I put too much on my plate, mostly probably like all of us. And I crashed. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. It took time to get my bearings back. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that they're really all the way there. I was just as lost as anyone else trying to navigate this diagnosis. It was a sudden task of, you don't have a choice. Um, and I felt like I had to find the why in all of it. That just seemed so important to me, and I searched for it so much. And my journey has always been advocacy, but more in the last 6 months. We actually, as a family, experienced discrimination for the first time. And we've always had so much support. So that just created this like emotion of anger. I was angry. And I felt as if I needed to be their voice. I needed to be louder. And I thought having the anger was wrong, but it was the emotion that sparked the progress that I could make. Um, it takes 1,000 actions to make an impact, and we all know that. But if it comes from the heart, instead of an empty space, then our actions will have more impact. Someone once told me, you will never get anything simply handed to you. You have to work for it, period. So I decided to just fight fire with fire. Use that emotion, use that feeling, but turn it into something bigger. So I went to the city council just here in my small town of Belle Plaine, Minnesota, and I just spoke from the heart about how we need to do better as a community. It's not even the schools, it's all of it. Community activities, accessible parks. And I created a petition that I'd never thought would become large, to get a park built in our city. And it boomed. And it was the sudden why, the why of why I'm doing this, why this all happened. And I focused really on this little red circle that the petition showed me. And it was a circle of all the people in our area, probably about 100 square mile radius in Minnesota, who wanted that park. I felt like, okay, this is it. I have the support. I have all of that. I have the voice. I went to the city council and I spoke about how we just need to do the next right thing, which is ironic with the title of this webinar. And I advocated for a fully accessible park in our town. To my surprise, uh, it was well received. And again, it sparked that why. And it made it a little bit more beautiful than angry. I presented my grant findings, funding, different parks in our area, different parks all over the United States, and what they look like. And the Parks Commission green lighted it. And that feeling was more than the anger. It was more than all of that. It was a moment like fighting with fire paid off. I have this theory where the world is like a pie slice. Some people have bigger pieces of the pie. Some people have more power. But I was determined to make my pie slice bigger, not just for me, not just for the twins, but for that red circle of people who wanted that. That was my determination. And with what I'm doing, my pie slice got bigger. Just one person that got up in front of 4 random individuals in a small town. And here I am speaking on this webinar. Uh, I feel like we can never give advice. It doesn't feel like when other people share their story, maybe you can't relate. Like the twins don't have seizures. So as much as I recognize that we're blessed that way, but the spectrum is so large for all conditions. And the only thing I could ever tell anyone if people reach out is don't isolate. Um, Find your support system. and that's what we call our tribe. And find the people within the systems that are going to help you. Schools, county workers, the state, your representatives, it doesn't matter. Find those people that will be your lighthouse for this journey. And, kind of like you said in the beginning, we can't defeat this. This isn't something that we can just fix, but you can find the why in it all, and it makes it more beautiful. And I wouldn't be here speaking if I didn't truly believe that. So the journey for us started from this emotion, and it grew into something so beautiful that will help so many families in our community and the neighboring communities, other states. The potential is so grand, and it will take years for this to happen. But the thing that I'm so excited about is to sit on the bench and watch everyone feel included. That, for me, makes all of this worth it. And that is my why. And I found it. And I just recommend to people, find that why, because you can't just stew in the why. You got to figure out the true why. So that's our journey. And, it's going to continue. And I can't wait to share more about the park and that moment where I get to sit on the bench and say, I brought these smiles, and I'm just one person. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsey. That's so inspiring. Everyone, I am going to place in the chat during this meeting the link to Lindsey's speech, because we have it posted on our website in case anybody wants to watch it after the webinar. Also wanted to remind everyone, if you have a question, please put it into the Q&A down at the bottom, and we will try and get to them at the end of the webinar. Okay, and now I'd like to introduce Shannon von Felden. She is the Vice President of Advocacy for the EveryLife Foundation for Rare Diseases. Welcome. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. She's going to share with us the nitty-gritty of how we can actually become advocates. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you so much. Let me finish sharing my slides. For some reason, I just can't share my slides and talk at the same time. I think that must be a really unique skill set. But thank you so much for the invitation to be here, Cristina, and thank you so much, Lindsey, for sharing your experience. That was a great way to start the webinar. And if you're here today, this is a great step in your advocacy journey. And I'm going to talk a little bit about rare disease advocacy, how to get started if this is new to you, and ways for you all to get involved if this is something that you're interested in doing more of. If you're not familiar with the EveryLife Foundation, really quickly, I'll let you know who we are. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we're solely dedicated to policy and advocacy. So our mission is to embolden the rare disease community to advocate for policies that advance the development of treatments and access to those diagnostics, treatments, and cures. And our advocacy program is called Rare Disease Legislative Advocates. We're a program of the EveryLife Foundation for Rare Diseases, and our main purpose is to educate advocates about advocacy and about how legislation and policy impacts patients and families. And we provide a lot of different trainings, education, resources, events, some of which I'll make sure to share at the end with you all. But there are a ton of different ways that patients and families, parents advocate for themselves and for their loved ones. And so tonight I am talking primarily about legislative advocacy. So the advocacy that is an activity by a person or a group of people like yourselves to influence or change decisions made by the people who make our laws. And those can be local, state, or federal laws and advocacy. And the reason why this is such an important topic for myself and for our organization is because we know that the policies that are made at the state, local, and federal level impact patients and families directly. And they affect a patient's ability to access treatments, cures, diagnostics, as well as the regulatory space where our treatments and cures are developed and approved and brought to market. And so we know that this is especially for rare diseases, a very unique ecosystem that patients and families are all impacted by. And because legislators love numbers and facts and stats to back up any claims, you know, there are over 10,000 rare diseases, 30 million people are affected. So even in an ultra rare disease, you are not alone. There are many people affected by rare diseases. And we are all facing, you know, a 15-year average for a drug to be developed and approved by the FDA. And most rare diseases do not have an FDA approved treatment, and families and patients are incurring a lot of money to take care of themselves and their loved ones with rare diseases. So this is a little bit of our why as to why we do the work that we do. And I think it's important to note that there are different levels at which advocacy can be done, and advocacy at all levels is important. And sometimes your advocacy will depend on where on the personal challenges that you are facing and what level those decisions are made on. So different decisions are made at different governmental levels. For instance, a lot of insurance coverage decisions are actually state government mandates. And so, you know, if you're facing insurance issues, usually that's your state government. If you're concerned about the cutouts in your sidewalks for wheelchair access, those are local governments, or your parks are local governments. And so where you live matters. Much of where you live determines your ability to receive care and treatments. But depending on your personal situation, your advocacy might be at the local, state, or federal level, depending. And I know everyone past a certain age will have seen how a bill becomes a law. I'm not going to reiterate how that happens. The video certainly makes it look like a much easier process than it actually is. But here I'd like to highlight that your advocacy at all levels is important, and your advocacy throughout a bill process is important. So your advocacy can start way before a bill even gets introduced. You can bring an idea for a bill to your legislators. If you're advocating for a bill that already exists, you could be advocating for it before it reaches a committee markup, before it has hearings. You could be advocating for it before it gets passed by one chamber, and then again during that process as it is being reviewed and passed in the second chamber. So your advocacy is important throughout that bill cycle to make sure that your best interests are being taken into consideration as your legislator is making those decisions. And how do you advocate? I know that advocacy can seem really intimidating to a lot of people, And really, advocacy is building those relationships with your legislators so that they understand what it means to be a rare disease patient, a rare disease family member. What are the challenges that you and your family are facing? And so that they can know a rare disease patient, so that they can put a face to the stories that they're hearing. I often tell advocates that a legislator or their staffer may never meet a rare disease patient unless they actually come into their office as a constituent and say that they're a rare disease patient. Or in a lot of cases, a staffer or a legislator might not even connect the dots that they do know someone that is a rare disease patient until you talk about rare diseases and the unique challenges of the community. And that's when they start to put those things together. So just creating those relationships and sharing your story so that your legislators know a rare disease patient. And I would say probably the ideal situation is that you start to build a relationship with that office so that they are actually asking you when healthcare decisions are being made in their office. They are using you as a resource. That is probably when you have really hit the big success of advocacy, is when you begin to be that resource. And when they're making important healthcare related decisions, they're asking you and other constituents that they know in the healthcare disease communities how bills or certain decisions would impact you and your family or your rare disease community. But there are lots of other ways to advocate. Asking questions, that's a really great way to build relationships with legislators and a great way to start conversations. And then, of course, engaging with organizations like you are doing tonight with the STXBP1 Foundation and listening to issues that are important to the organization and their policy goals and working with them on those. Some examples of advocacy, it can be as simple as hearing a bill that is being brought to the House or Senate floor that you know is going to be voted on that you agree with or disagree with, and calling that office and letting them know why you agree or disagree, and whether you hope that they vote for it or against it, and why that is. What is that issue? Why is it important to you? That is a really easy way to advocate. You can attend events. Your elected officials hold town halls. I know, like, my council member, because we don't have legislators in DC, we have council members, but my council member often has like little office hours at a coffee shop, and constituents go to the coffee shop to be able to say hi and bring issues of importance to them to the council member. So legislators do that, hold events just like that too, that are open to anyone that is their constituent to drop by, attend, and say hi. Creating a petition, attending a gathering, and sending postcards, letters, or emails, those are all advocacy. I think the one type of advocacy that gets probably a little bit more attention is actually meeting with your lawmakers in person. And those can be really effective ways to advocate with your members of Congress, with your state legislators, and even with your local council members, mayor, etc. When you meet with those members and you're thinking about creating relationships with them, I would suggest doing a little bit of research and finding ways to make connections with those legislators. I do a little bit of homework before you actually meet with them, researching their website or their social media. I would look at their press releases, look to see what committees they're on. If they're healthcare related committees, that means that they have a little bit more jurisdiction over bills that are healthcare related before they come to the floor for a vote. So they get a little bit more say in how those bills are formed and making amendments to them before they even come to the House floor. And so just being prepared and researching is a really great way to making sure that you're creating those lasting relationships and you know what is important to the member and how you can connect perhaps the challenges you're facing with the issues that that member already supports. And I would just reiterate here that sometimes legislators and their staff can feel like they have a little bit of a thankless job. People ask a lot of them, and that is most certainly their job. You should never feel bad about calling them, emailing them, sending them letters, or asking for a meeting. They're your members, they're your legislators, they represent you. You're their constituents, and so that's their job. But a thank you does go a really long way. You definitely want to be remembered as an enjoyable. Sometimes we don't always discuss enjoyable topics. They're hard topics, but you want it to be a pleasant meeting. And ending with a thank you, sending a thank you message afterwards, thanking them, especially if they have supported rare disease issues in the past. Those thank yous go a long way, and they can be a call, an email, a social media post. A thank you is also a great way to follow up, because most likely when you meet with a legislator, they're not going to give you an answer right away on your ask or the issue that you're coming to talk to them about. So sending a thank you message is a great way to follow up as well, to get those answers on the issues that you came in to talk to them about. And building these relationships, this is dated, I will say. This is it was probably dated when I started to use this graphic a few years ago, because it does have faxes on there. I will say the congressional office I worked for, we heavily used our fax machine, but that was quite a while ago. So I don't know if they still are using faxes or not. They probably are. But why I liked to show this is it really does this. What this was a survey done asking the congressional offices the influence that certain types of contacts from constituents had on the decisions that their office was making. And I believe it was on decisions that had not been made yet by the office. So it was on issues that they were still determining their position on, and what type of contacts had the greatest influence. And you'll see that it is in-person visits from constituents that make the greatest influence on offices. And I would say that that is still true to this day. I would add in virtual meetings. In-person and virtual meetings probably have the greatest influence. And I will say, if in-person or virtual meetings are not an option, I know we're super busy. And as Lindsey was talking about, sometimes all we've got in us is a quick email or a postcard or a phone call. And, you know, whatever you can do is doing something, like Lindsey said already. But I'll say that those in-person virtual meetings do make a great difference. And I would say right under that would be individualized email messages. You know, that there are form letters. They're great. They're great ways for a member's office to tally off how many constituents might feel about a certain issue. But individualizing your email message and sending that to the office is just a little step above that offices do appreciate and take into account. when they're making decisions. And I know that I'm a mom, so I know how busy we are, school and work and activities and doctor's appointments and everything else. And so we do what we can. And so advocacy for a lot of us gets, we fit it in, when the kids are in bed or, at our lunch break during work. And so I know that we do what we can. I think that advocacy really is a long game. I think Lindsey also kind of touched on this too. It is a long game. It's not one and done. You can, but if you're really looking to make a big impact like Lindsey made in her community, it is something that you have to stay at, and you have to really follow that bill's progress. And when you can make an impact, before a committee votes or before the House or Senate votes. And I would just really encourage you that if you see an issue of importance to you or your community being discussed by your state legislature, by Congress, you don't want to wait until it's too late to share your voice, to tell them how you would be personally impacted by this, and how others in your community, in your district, in your state would be impacted by that issue, whether it's for better or for worse. So even if you have limited time, I would just make sure not to wait until it's too late to reach out to your legislators if there's something of importance. This is like a short little snippet beginning starter information. So if this is of interest to you, if you want to learn more, if there are issues that you want to learn more, like more specifically about some of the policy issues that the EveryLife Foundation or other rare disease community members are working on, we have a lot of educational tools and resources on our website at rareadvocates.org or everylifefoundation.org. We have policy primers that talk about legislative issues. We have scorecards by state, so you can see how your legislators are doing in Congress. We have tip sheets, so if you're interested in just figuring out what more you could be doing for advocacy, we have tip sheets on the appropriations process or scheduling a meeting with your members. So it really runs the gamut of information that you might want or need to become an advocate. And then the EveryLife Foundation actually has some really interesting policy-related research. This is just one of the many studies that the EveryLife Foundation has worked on over the years, and I just thought I'd quickly share. This was actually a study that we released in 2024, I believe, on the impact of delayed diagnosis in rare diseases. And the study looked at 7 rare diseases and found that the diagnostic odyssey across those 7 rare diseases, the economic impact of the medical costs and the lost income for individuals and families was an average of $220,000. So this really highlights not only the financial burden of the diagnostic odyssey, but really highlights the need for an early diagnosis to start interventions and treatments as soon as possible to delay complications and disabilities. So this is one of many things that the EveryLife Foundation has been working on to provide support and for an early diagnosis for rare diseases. And the patient voice is critical. We really believe that that patients should be at the table when decisions are being made about patients and their families. And there's no better way to ensure that patients and rare disease patients have that voice at the table than using your voice. The patient voice adds a different perspective to everything that goes on in healthcare and can point out real gaps in the system. Like I said, legislators may not know a rare disease patient or realize it, and they don't understand the challenges that rare disease families and patients face unless we talk to them about those challenges and use our voices. I do want to quickly, if you have any questions for me or Lindsey or Cristina, please put them in the Q&A. Before I close up, I just want to share a few little events and programs with you all on ways that you guys can get more involved in the advocacy work that the EveryLife Foundation does. We host a advocacy event in Washington, D.C. in February called Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. In 2026, it'll be February 24th to 26th. And we offer a limited number of travel reimbursements for patients to attend Rare Disease Week. And that application is actually open right now until November 7th. So if this is of interest to you, I definitely recommend going and applying. You're not committed to anything, but we have a limited number. And so I definitely recommend that you apply for travel reimbursement if you are interested in coming to DC for Rare Disease Week. You can find the application and more information on what Rare Disease Week entails at rareadvocates.org/RDW. And this is just for the travel reimbursement application. The registration for Rare Disease Week will open in January 2026. And we have a lot of different programs. I just quickly want to make sure you all were aware of that. We actually host state advocacy days at state capitals. This year we did 3. It was New Jersey, we were just in Michigan, and early this year we were in Virginia. We're planning which states we're going to in 2026. So keep your eye out for those. Advocating at your state capital is definitely easier than coming all the way to Washington, D.C. So those are really great ways to get involved with your state legislature. We also have a really great virtual youth and teen advocacy day. So if you have kids, siblings can also participate in our virtual youth and teen advocacy day. It's scheduled for June 18th in 2026. And that's for advocates aged 10 to 18. We train them with kid-appropriate language. We provide the asks that are usually child pediatric focused. And then we schedule the meetings for them to meet with their legislators virtually. And it's actually, I think, a lot of fun, and the kids seem to enjoy it as well. We also have an in-district virtual event for advocates to meet with their representatives and senators during the August recess. So we just finished that up in August, but that happens every year in August, called Rare Across America. So that's a little bit easier than coming to Washington, D.C. too. So you can keep your eye out for more information about Rare Across America. And we host lots of different training webinars. We have monthly RDLA webinars, a Share Your Story webinar that goes into more details on tips and tricks on sharing your story. We just had a great Share Your Story webinar earlier this month on sharing your story while living with a disability, and had advocates sharing their stories on how they advocate with different types of disabilities. And it was really wonderful, informative webinar. And we have webinars that focus on state advocacy too. And then if you do have, or if you actually, if you have family members, or if you yourself are an advocate between the ages of 16 and 30, we have a young adult rare representatives program. This is for anyone who's directly impacted by rare diseases. So either themselves or their family members have a rare disease. And what's really unique is this isn't just an advocacy program. They do a lot of skill building opportunities, a lot of career type training opportunities. in order to prepare the next generation of rare disease advocates. And they have like a public speaking training course and a leadership academy that are great opportunities for this age group. And here is my information. So if you have any questions beyond today, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is right there at the bottom, svonfelden@everylifefoundation.org. You can find our website, everylifefoundation.org, and you can find EveryLife Foundation or Rare Advocates on most social media channels. So, but don't hesitate to reach out to me if you do have any questions or have anything that you'd like to speak further about. But it's been my pleasure to be here today with you guys tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That was amazing. I'm going to close with my quick story. There are no current questions in the Q&A, so if anybody pops up during my spiel, I will address the questions. I was lucky enough to attend Rare on the Hill last February. It was an amazing experience. I didn't know what I wanted to advocate for, and this was an interesting option to attend and be given something to advocate for. The EveryLife Foundation prepares you by giving you descriptions of what the legislation is that you can support. And then they have a series of meetings that you can attend along with other rare disease patients and caregivers that teaches you exactly how you can talk to your representatives. And then you all spend a day going from office to office to your senators and your congresspeople and advocating for the legislation that you've been taught about. It was amazing to just spend time with other rare disease patients and caregivers. So it was a wonderful experience from the start. And I also learned how the legislation passes through DC. I'm an attorney and I didn't even fully understand that except for, remember the jingle growing up, how to pass a bill, just a bill on the Hill. And it was intimidating at first, but the EveryLife Foundation prepared us so that it was no longer intimidating, and it was really a good experience. One piece of legislation that we supported was something called the Rare Pediatric Disease Priority Review Voucher. In a nutshell, basically, we all kind of know that as a rare disease, pharmaceutical companies aren't necessarily interested in trying to find a cure for us because it's not profitable for them. However, the government has this legislation called the PRV, which basically set up a system of voucher trading amongst pharmaceutical companies. So a pharmaceutical company that was researching something rare could sell their voucher to a bigger pharmaceutical company, thereby getting the funding to continue their research for the rare disease that they're working on. This legislation had a zero cost impact to the United States government. Costs nothing. So all the money exchanged between pharmaceutical companies and no taxpayer dollars were exchanged. However, the legislators let it lapse. So last year, what we got to talk about was asking the legislators to please revive it and reinstate it. There's no downside. Yet they didn't. So I am going back this year and I am hoping to discuss that one more time and see if we can make an impact again. I would hope that anybody who's interested would join me. It's a really good experience. You really get to meet a lot of people and learn a lot. Go onto the EveryLife Foundation website to learn more about it. You can email me about it. I'll put my email into the chat. But I would love company this time because it was fun to see other rare diseases that had a large group of people there to represent themselves. And I think STXBP1 could be something like that. So Lindsey or Shannon, if you have any closing words, please offer them up. There are no specific questions in the Q&A. So I want to thank everyone for attending. Lindsey, Shannon, raise your hand if you want to say something. I'll give you the floor.
I put some links in the chat. I linked to the Rare Disease Week travel reimbursement application for everyone. as well as more information on the PRV program that you were talking about, Christina, and the action alert. So if you want to take action and send an email to your legislators about the Pediatric Rare Disease Priority Review Voucher Program, you can click that link and do that there. Hopefully that that bill did pass committee. So on the House side, so hopefully when the shutdown ends and Congress gets back to their normal business, hopefully that will move and be voted on in the House and move to the Senate. But any action others take, I'm sure will just help. Yeah, thank you so much, Christina, for inviting me and for sharing more about your experience at Rare Disease Week too. That's lovely to hear.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I also, for anyone who knows someone who could not log in tonight, we have recorded this webinar. We're going to post it onto the foundation's website, hopefully by tomorrow. So please share it if you know someone else who might benefit from this. Thank you, everyone. Again, my email and Shannon's email are both in the chat. If you want to reach out to us for any reason, please do. Thank you again to Lindsey. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
You up?